say goodbye for the last time. Say goodbye for the last time. And with a sigh and these tears that I cry, oh my friend, oh my friend, oh my friend. Say hello to the sorrow. Say hello to the sorrow. And with a sigh and these tears that I cry, oh my friend, oh my friend, oh my friend. Say goodbye for the last time. You must say goodbye for the last time. And with a sigh and these tears that I cry, oh my friend, oh my friend, oh my friend, oh my friend. Say goodbye for the last time.
Hello, welcome to the last Goodbye Dash Book Heroes of America, a bi-weekly show that honors our American heroes. I'm your host, Johnny Pizza Fratangelo, along with our executive producer, Nikki Fratangelo-Berardi, and our co-hosts and commentators, Ray-Stingray Schnitzler, Ralph Narciso, and Jenn Pro. Tonight's special guest is Chili Palm, author of the book From Hell's Heart.
Hey, everybody.
Chili works for the government and had an amazing career. He's actually a nuclear physicist, which is way above my head. So I'm going to let him talk. I'm going to introduce Chili to everyone right now. Chili Palmer,
Sure.
Welcome to the show, buddy.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
You want to give us an idea, your background, where you're from?
Sure.
Whatever?
So I grew up in Brooklyn. I was, Bay Ridge, Bensonhurst, hanging out in Zio's, 101s, the diner over on 4th Avenue, stuff like that. I grew up in Williamsburg, actually. Went to school, went to City College first and became, got my education. So the book From Hell's Heart, it's all the people in the book are real people, and
Right here.
and some of the events are real, and some are just dramatized for the book. And the book is based on a theme by the great Japanese Yohimbo is the story. Akira Kurosawa was the author, and it's been remade by Hollywood. You probably know it as For a Fistful of Dollars, one of the spaghetti westerns, and it was made again with Bruce Willis. And I forgot what they called that, so that one didn't do very well. So it's a very good theme. It's the theme of putting your protagonist in between two opposing forces, and he plays off one against the other. In this situation, myself and some other scientists and some DEA guys and some nuclear emergency special task force guys, we find ourselves in between a rogue government agency and the Colombian government, as well as between two rival drug cartels, as well as the armed revolutionary forces of Colombia. And the story is about how nuclear weapons were being smuggled to South America to store, so that the Russians would think that we were dismantling them, that we were honoring the START II treaty that we had with Russia back in the 90s, where we were supposed to, scale down our nuclear arsenal. And those weapons get stolen by the armed revolutionary forces, along with a cache of other types of weapons. And Mickey Blaine, the character in the book, or the name I used to go by in the 80s and 90s, he finds himself investigating this and calling upon his wife's family, who is a Colombian cartel, for help in trying to find where these weapons are located. And eventually, he finds them and saves the world, and he's declared missing, and he's living the life of luxury in Miami under the name Chili Palmer.
Right.
So it kind of borrows. So if you're a big film file, what do they call them, cinephiles? If you're a cinephile, you'll catch things in the book that will remind you of other movies. So the film borrows from, say, the movie Tequila Sunrise with Mel Gibson. It borrows from, what else does it borrow from? There's even a little Star Wars scene in there that, like you don't know it's Star Wars, but as you read it, you go, wow, this is familiar.
Well, your dog was named Chewbacca.
Yeah, well, right, and one of the dogs is named Chewbacca.
Right.
But so it does that kind of thing. There's situations where you look. The Mel Gibson movie, Road Warrior. There's kind of a scene in there that if you read it, you would go, well, that kind of reminds me of that scene in the Road Warrior, And it's very subtle. It's kind of along the same way that Tarantino does that in his movies. So he'll make a nod to another movie subtly in his movie. Some people will catch it, some people won't. It's for the appreciation of the people who do catch it and see it. There's also a kind of a scene there that makes a nod to The Fifth Element. Mm-hmm. And in the movie, Chili runs into this Russian sniper female assassin, and he kind of introduces her, himself to her, and that whole introduction scene is similar to how Bruce Willis met Lelu in the movie The Fifth Element. And if you never saw The Fifth Element, fine, the story reads fine. If you did see The Fifth Element, you go, wow, this kind of reminds me of that time in the movie The Fifth Element. And so there's lots of little things, like little nuggets like that buried in the movie. There's a nod to Miami Vice, Chili and Paulie and his best friend Jake. They all share a boat, which is the same kind of a boat that they used in Miami Vice. So in the story, Chili is very much into the whole Miami Vice show. Another big thing that people may or may not have noticed: all the villains are named John, right?
Oh, thank you.
Every single villain is named John. Now, I borrowed that from the movie Buckaroo Banzai. If you ever saw the movie of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension, all of the black electroids from Planet 10 are all named John. And there's John Smallberries, and there's John Big Booty, and there's John, whatever. And so in the story, if you're reading a guy, like, eventually you notice that all the villains have the same first name, and most of the villains are working for the CIA. They're working for the rogue part of the government, and that's also why they all have the same name, John. But it's that little nod to the movie Buckaroo Banzai.
The book. Reading the book kind of reminds me of a lot of the James Bond films. That kind of characters.
Yeah, but he
women.
struggles with his. Yeah, you could say that, but Chili in the book, Mickey Blaine is not a nice person. He struggles with his morals, like he kind of has the ends justify the means, and he'll do whatever. In the story, Mickey Blaine starts out as a drug smuggler for his wife's Colombian cartel family, even though he was a scientist. And eventually he decides to go into and become a scientist and stop the whole drug smuggling thing. And so he's not like a really nice person in the story. And that's one of the things he's constantly struggling with his own morals and stuff. And his partner in the story his name is Jake. Excuse me. And Jake today is actually a minister down in Tampa to a non-denominational church. Billy today, he works for a chemical engineering company in New Jersey, and I believe Paulie is a vice president for the New York State Power Authority or something like that. So and then Maddie, Maddie still works in the DC area for SAIC, which is a government subcontracting company. So there is a lot of real people, and all their characters. I believe I portrayed them pretty true to what they were back in the 1980s or early 1990s when I had met them, and when we actually hung out a lot and did crazy adventures, just not the adventures that are in the book.
So your book was inspired by real world experiences, then?
Right, real world experiences, real life situations, real people. Just like I said, the United States did not try to smuggle tactical nuclear weapons for hiding them in South America, and they were not accidentally detonated, even though in the story in the book. So in the story in the book, there's a detonation. Mickey Blaine detonates one of the nuclear weapons to kind of destroy all the other ones. because he doesn't want them falling into the wrong hands, and he also doesn't want them going back to the rogue government agency. And both the Colombian government and the American government write that off as a seismic earthquake that takes place coincidentally to the date when the weapons were allegedly detonated in the storyline. So there actually was a earthquake that day in the area that kind of destroyed a large portion of that area and made it kind of off limits for people for a while. Contrary to popular belief, detonating a nuclear device does not give you 1,000 years or 100,000 years of death and destruction. It's more like Nagasaki and Hiroshima. You know, within 5-10 years, you're back there building everything. You know, everything is dispersed. Everything is sucked up into the groundwater and whatnot. So, you know, maybe it kind of clarifies for some people some misconceptions about nuclear weapons and some science, and you know, maybe there's some science things that people may enjoy or may find it boring or difficult to read through.
So I'm trying to get a read on what was your actual, like, what kind of actual jobs did you actually do back in the 80s? Can you share that with us?
Sure. So I had worked for the Department of Energy and the Department of Defense. I had worked on, I wrote a couple of papers. So back then, the big thing was the Star Wars defense initiative of Ronald Reagan. So I was working for Raytheon Nuclear, and we were developing, I was responsible for the cooling system for the laser beams that were going to be put on the satellite platform. So, you know, it was things like that. You know, Jake worked on the arming, fusing, and firing of, I think the B-61 nuclear weapon type devices. You know, Paulie was a bag man back in the day in Bay Ridge for some local mobsters or whatever, and things like that. So there is a lot of true stories in the book. I don't really mention too much what I was doing back then in the past. I just kind of focus on this fictitious story.
I got a question. What inspired you to do this book? And also, besides what inspired you to do the book, what gave you the ideas to put like those little twists on the story?
Sure. So I'm a photographer, right? In addition, Chili Palmer is a Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week photographer. You can find, you can go to my YouTube channel. You'll see me backstage with supermodel Irina Shayk and supermodel Kate Upton, and you'll see me backstage with the Kardashians and whatnot, doing Fashion Week events and doing runway shows and interviewing people. And my photo shoots are inspired by film noir. And I kind of blend fashion with kind of urban motifs. So my studio was located in the Graffiti Arts Building in Brooklyn before it was torn down, turned into condos over in Long Island City. And I was the only artist in the building that was a photographer. And I used to do all my photo shoots all over. Thank you, John, for sharing the book again. That so those two Chinese symbols. So those Chinese symbols are the symbols for danger and opportunity, and that is the theme in the story. That there is the opportunity is risk and danger. And that's how the Chinese look at opportunity. And then that is an authentic reproduction of an actual nuclear test explosion during the late 1950s, when we were blowing up Bikini Island and other islands in the Pacific. So anyway, to get back to Stingray. Sorry,
So
Stingray
You
question.
can call me whatever you want. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
You're the
You're the
topic.
call you late
You're
for
the,
dinner.
you're
Yeah.
the hero today.
Yeah. So I was very much into movies. So I'm kind of like a cinephile. I know I can pretty much recite lines from different movies. I kind of look at real life actually imitates art. Like if you take an event that takes place in real life, Shakespeare probably wrote a play about it, a couple hundred years ago. Like they once said that there is no human interaction that cannot be found in a Shakespearean play that has already been dealt between parents and husbands and wives and siblings and enemies and frenemies and whatnot have all been played out in Shakespearean plays. And so I kind of applied that. So borrowing from different movies was something, a character, and this is probably where I got the idea, not to ramble on here. There was a TV show called Remington Steele,
I
played
remember that show.
with Pierce Brosnan, who later became 007. And in the movie, he used old movies that he remembered to solve all his cases. And every episode was actually based on, the Maltese Falcon, Casablanca, whatever. And I found that really fascinating, the way of looking at things in life. And then I was a big fan of Tarantino, and I knew Tarantino based a lot of his themes on Akira Kurosawa. The Magnificent Seven was based on the Seven Samurai. That's Akira Kurosawa's work. The Fistful of Dollars for a Few Dollars More. That's all based on Akira Kurosawa. In fact, I was reading Sergio Leone, the producer, the executive producer. He actually was sued by Akira Kurosawa over his a few dollar for a Fistful of Dollars movie, and they had some huge settlement that he had to pay Akira Kurosawa on because he had over borrowed from that theme. So that's kind of where I kind of took it, and I wrote it back in the book was actually written back in 1996, 1997, and I was working at a nuclear facility, and I was working the night shift, and I was on what they would call the rapid response team, except there was never anything to rapidly respond to. It was literally just sitting around 10, 12 hours a night with absolutely nothing to do. And I just said, you know what? I'm going to put down some notes, and I'm just going to, I got an idea for a film or something. Now, the character, Chili Palmer, is from the movie Get Shorty. I actually own the trademark to the name Chili Palmer. In the movie Get Shorty, Chili has an idea for a movie, and he's out in Hollywood, and he has an idea for a movie. And so I kind of had the idea back in the 90s for a story, and that's when I started writing it. So that's kind of how that kind of took off. When I just finally got around to publishing it just around COVID, and I'm going to have to do something. I'm going to have to start doing some advertising and things of that nature to kind of get it out there more. And I appreciate people sharing it. And it's available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, really, and it's available from the publisher. And
yeah, it's really, really good book. Really good. Yeah. I have to ask you something, to get to the nuclear stuff.
Yeah, sure.
Are nuclear bombs similar to like cars, where when a car, as you get a newer version of a car, the mechanics have to go to school to learn about how to work on this new car. Is
Yeah.
it nuclear weapons similar to that?
No, we're still using 1950s
Really?
technology, 1960s technology.
Oh, okay. So no.
Uh,
So if I see a nuclear bomb in my basement, I could call, hey Chili, come on, they got a problem.
Yeah.
You can defuse it. You can defuse it.
I come and try to diffuse it, right? And I can put a blindfold on, and you can give me a paper clip and a junior mint, because I think that's kind of my line. I can diffuse a nuclear weapon with nothing but a paper clip and a junior mint in the dark.
Wow.
So
And why is that? Is that a joke or is that real?
no, that's a joke. That's actually a line from the movie Night and Day with what the hell is his name? The action guy, the young guy, the guy that does all the Mission Impossible movies. I forget his name.
Tom Cruise?
Tom Cruise, yeah. That's actually a Tom Cruise line in the movie Night and Day.
Oh, okay.
But I thought it was a great line to use.
Yeah.
So how deep did you get with, as far as with like nuclear weapons, with the government, with the CIA, possibly with security clearances, and how deep in the government were you?
So I had a secret clearance back then. You know, when we were working for Raytheon Nuclear and working on the Star Wars defense stuff, you know, we all had top secret clearances.
Yeah.
We had Q clearances back then.
Can you disclose whether you were at Area 51 to all our viewers?
No,
No.
no, I was never at Area 51, but I was down at Pantex and I was down in Albuquerque and places like that. My friend, he passed away. His father worked on the Manhattan Project. And as a little kid, I was telling John earlier before the show came on, the FBI used to sit outside their house every night. So nobody really knew his father was a nuclear physicist working on the Manhattan Project. But I guess people in the neighborhood did kind of notice that there's like this car sitting in front of that house every night full of like men in black suits just hanging out. And he tells me some amazing stories that I can't share about the Manhattan Project. He actually, his wife, I actually have to go down and visit his wife. She has a bunch of memorabilia, stuff that probably belongs in the Smithsonian or something. It was a lot of personal effects from the father that the father had and passed down to my friend. That, you know, kind of like, you know, how Trump has classified documents allegedly and is lying around the floor of his living room. These are probably, I'm sure they've been declassified by now, but they're probably classified at the time. And that's the funny thing, because we all, like, there's not a single scientist that's walking around right here on the streets in Brooklyn, Manhattan, LA, Miami, Florida, whatever you want to think, that doesn't have up in his head sufficient nuclear secrets that if somebody got a hold of him and like threatened to murder his family or something like that, that he would probably say, okay, well, this is how you build a bomb. Get me some plutonium and I'll build you a bomb right here in your basement. And I don't think the government takes that like seriously enough, you know. You know, I mean, I don't know, what do? Do you just like zap me and make me forget everything I know, or what to
like
do?
Men in Black.
Yeah,
exactly. Exactly. Do you just go flashy flash and tell me that you know, I'm just a photographer, I'm a gay fashion week photographer now, or something like that? So I mean,
well, you could be, all due respects, you could be a Peter Parker, all I know. You know, you could be a Spider-Man. I don't know. You know, exactly. I think you're being modest a little bit.
No,
but I think all joking aside, the reality of what you're talking about the average people have no clue what, what it, even for you to get that clearance, what you had to go through to get that clearance.
Oh yeah, your parents had to be born in the United States. I believe your grandparents had to be born in the United States. The extent that they did background checks on, like even during the time, like if I had gotten a DUI, I would lose my job. Forget about it. I would show that I'm reckless or something like that. So
I mean, I remember I worked in city government. A guy who got a ticket when he was a kid in Puerto Rico on a presidential detail, and they knocked him off in the middle of the detail, and everybody's like, "What's going on?" Oh, we forgot to talk about a ticket that he got when he was a kid. So people don't really understand the magnitude of what you went through to do what you
get
did.
To that point, right? And to get that education too. I mean, I walk around life and I think everybody's as smart as me, and I've found out that actually a lot of people are really stupid. But when you're interacting with other scientists, like if all your best friends that you hang out with are scientists, then you think, well, that must be the average level of intelligence of everybody because that's the only people you knew in school and that's the only people you know from work. And so when I, got into photography, I ran into a lot of stupid people. Like I just I can do that math in my head. Like, why are you writing that down on a piece of paper and trying to figure that out or something like that? And, or even just like common sense things. Like, it just kind of surprised me, to the level of intelligence.
So what is your level of education? Are you a doctor or have you reached a doctorate or?
No, I don't have a PhD.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you graduated from which school?
City College and then Champaign-Urbana, University of Illinois.
Oh, okay.
It's funny. My son was dating a girl. Going back about 12 years ago, something like that. Actually, 15 years ago. And her father, designed the Mars Pro. And he said, Dad, when you sit with this guy, he says, he's like up here, you know what I mean? As far as having a conversation with him, you know what I mean? And and you feel like you're down here,
Yeah.
It's amazing, man. The brains.
So
I've written papers and I have papers published and things like that. But
so what made you go into photography?
That's a funny story. So me and all the guys every Thursday used to hang out at the Four Seasons, and Steve Sachs from the Dodgers and the Yankees would hang out there. Alex Rodriguez would be hanging out with us. We had a table, there was some alleged Italian guys that were hanging out with us at the table, and some guy, we would just start talking to some guy, and he was like a fashion photographer, and I didn't, and I said, I had a few drinks in me, and I said something like, today you could give a chimpanzee a camera and he'd take just as good pictures as, and this guy was kind of bragging about his master's degree in art and in photography and whatever else. And I was like, you give a camera to a monkey and he can take the same pictures. It's not that hard. And he got really upset. And he was like, no, you can never do what I do. Without even knowing anything. Now, I took art. At one point when I was in school, I was going to be an art major until I kind of realized that artists never make any money in life. They die broke. And I had my uncle, not to diverge too much. My uncle was an extremely realist painter, very, very, very good, out in Colorado. And he basically was starving out there. He ended up having to work as a professor, and he could barely put his kids through school. And my cousin went on to become a nuclear physicist, and he has a PhD. And my other cousin was the base commander for the 82nd Airborne. And they helped me with some information and stuff when I was working on my book. But the point being was, it wasn't until after he died, like he couldn't sell a painting for $25. And then after he passed away, my aunt put his paintings out, you know, kind of like a garage sale kind of thing. And people are like, oh my God, it's so good. And how much do you want for it? And they're writing her checks for $2,000, $5,000. And next thing you know, his artwork is in huge demand. You know, paintings are selling for $10,000, $15,000. They're talking about naming a street after him, you know, and he's dead. Like, he thought he was a bad artist his whole life. And so I quickly got out of that, and my counselor or guidance guy, whatever, said, you should go into engineering then. It'll pay more. It'll pay better. And then I said, well, what kind of engineering what would pay the most? And he was like, well, you know, being the 70s, he goes, nuclear engineering is probably going to pay the most. And I said, well, then that's what I want to be. So anyway, the photographer guy doesn't even know who I am, doesn't even know what I do. Says, oh, you can never do this. This is crazy. And I go, I bet you $1 that I could become just as good as you, but you will never get to be able to do what I do. And he's just like, yeah, sure. And we make the bet for $1. And then I tell him I'm a nuclear scientist with a classified security clearance. And so he right away goes, oh, well, you're still never going to become a photographer. And I go out and I buy some photography equipment. And there's a couple of these modeling websites that I join. And I noticed that there's a studio for sale in Long Island City in that graffiti arts building. And I kind of liked all the graffiti. And I said, wow, it'd be really great to take pictures of that stuff. And I go over there and I get a studio, and then I buy some furniture for the studio, and I buy some lights and some other things, and I take a couple of pictures and I put them on the little modeling website, and then I'm just waiting for people to contact me. And a couple of girls contact me, and I do a photo shoot with them, and the girl gets the pictures and she goes, you know, I've been shooting for like about a year now, and these are the best pictures anybody's ever given me. He goes, you are really good. I did not think that you were going to be that good. And then I went from there. And I got really lucky. One of the models that I had met on that website was the former VH1 Supermodel of the Year. And she kind of took a liking to me. And she kind of liked the whole, I want to shoot with the graffiti. And so she came in and we did some shoots. And she's like, I got to take you with me to LA. She goes, we're going to Fashion Week. She goes, you got to come with me. I'm going to introduce you to everybody. And she takes me out to LA, and I register. And basically on her word, they give me my credentials to be a runway photographer. And she's just pulling me around, introducing me to designers backstage. This is Chili. He's a famous New York photographer. He's really great. And it just kind of builds up this notoriety. And, and more and more people like, we want to work with you. We want you to do this. We want you to do that. We want you to shoot our line of clothing. We want to put you in this magazine and things like that. So it just kind of really took off. And that was really surprising to me. I met this one girl, and her best friend was the Basketball Housewives reality show producer. And she introduced me to him, and we sat down. He goes, you should have a reality show. You should make a reality TV show. And he goes, it'll be like The Big Bang Theory meets America's Next Top Model. And I go, okay, that sounds great to me. And one of my other friends from the neighborhood actually worked for Gloria Estefan Productions down in Miami. And we got together and we got this executive producer, and he put up some money, and we filmed a pilot, and we filmed a reality TV show trailer, and you can watch the trailer on my YouTube channel. It's very interesting. And then we came to a little problem, because they were all set, and we're going to sell this. We're going to shoot 8 episodes, and people are writing some of the episodes, and I'm helping them write the episodes and things like that. And then I spoke to security at where I was working, and they were like, "What are you, stupid?" Like, he goes, "You can't go on a reality TV show and say that you have a security clearance and that you're like a nuclear scientist in real life." He goes, "You." I go, if you wanna turn in your clearance and you can say you used to be, you can do that." And I said, "Well, that's not going to work because this job really pays me a hell of a lot of money, and that reality TV show isn't going to really. Maybe I think I'm going to get like $8,000 an episode or something like that, and they were only going to try to do like 8 episodes or whatever." And I said, "Well, no, that's probably not a good idea. I don't think we're going to be able to do that."
No.
And that was pretty much the end of the idea of doing the reality TV show.
All right, Chili, I was just going to say to you, if you would have done that the next day, you would have been in Creedmoor. They would have sent you over to Creedmoor with cops or Bellevue right away.
Yeah,
this guy's a clown, blah, 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 blah. You know?
Either that or 2 men in black would have came up and shot me in the back of the head, and that would have been that. You know, who knows? We can't have this guy on TV. Who is in a reality show? Who knows what he's going to talk about?
Right.
And the idea, like some of the premises of the episode, was that one of the models was going to come up with something that was going to solve a complicated, like, nuclear scientific equation, and something that she was doing was going to inspire a solution to something else, and vice versa. And then something that I was working on, some experiment or something, was going to turn into a great idea for a photo shoot or something. And so that was kind of how they were going to like cross that over.
But the funniest thing is, like, you talked about it before, you said, you know, you and the people you work with, you're just walking around in the public with the rest of us. And, you know, with this ability to build a nuclear weapon and secrets that, you know, yet the government publicly puts out, you know, news releases all the time about how, you know, how dangerous it is that someone could get a dirty bomb and explode it in Midtown Manhattan. Yet that's such a conundrum, because here they are with people like you. You could be kidnapped. You know?
Exactly. Right. I mean, I could be crazy and go, hey, you know what? I'm going to extort New York City for the sum of $1 million. But you know, or like you said, somebody could just kidnap me or whatever. And it doesn't even have to be that. It could be, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Swordfish.
John Travolta.
John Travolta. And they kidnapped the hacker to hack into the Department of Defense, you know, things. And that guy, he's just out on and it's literally the truth. This guy is just out there working on an oil rig, and in his head, he can literally break into the Department of Defense, you know, computers.
It's amazing.
And there are, you know, there has to be thousands of people like that are, you know, today, whatever, they're making your coffee in McDonald's, you know, but the guy used to be a top scientist or something.
Right. And this is the funniest thing, because this is our government so concerned, or at least letting the public know that they are on top of it. You know, we have your best security in mind. Nothing's, you know, this false sense, because you know, the general public doesn't know that what we're sharing tonight on this show.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I think every scientist that ever worked at a government agency should have a lifetime bodyguard, like a scientist.
Oh, I totally agree with you there.
Yeah.
You know,
like if you ever once, and especially if you were one of the guys, I mean, there are guys that put the whole thing together, like Oppenheimer on the Manhattan Project, you know, and at the time in the 50s, Oppenheimer did in fact have a whole bunch of FBI agents around him around the clock 24/7. But, you know, I mean, it's just, you know, today.
It's not the same. It's not the
chilling.
same as it was years ago.
I remember a story. I don't know the guy's name. He was some kind of like scientist, and it was during the 50s, and he was over by Coney Island, and somebody tossed him out of a window. They said that he jumped, but there was, theory that this scientist was tossed out the window. I mean, you bring up a good point there when you think about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's take a look at the movie Red. Did you ever see the movie Red?
No.
With with Bruce Willis and Catherine Zeta-Jones, whatever, a couple other people. So that was Red stood for Retired Extremely Dangerous, and that was CIA agents that are just out there walking around, living in Middle America. The guy's like a walking army, and then for some reason they decide to try to assassinate him, and he's going right up and in the movie Red, Bruce Willis breaks into the CIA headquarters and steals some documents, and he's able to do this, and he's able to do it with the help. He goes over to the Russian embassy, and he asks the Russian embassy, his friends, for the daily codes to Langley so that he can get into Langley. So the Russian embassy has the code to walk into Langley.
Right. It's like
yeah.
It's like in that.
And I wouldn't be surprised if that wasn't true.
Yeah, I believe it. And in the Line of Fire, where John Malkovich is a retired, so-called retired CIA wet boy, they call him a master. Master executioner, and yet he's walking around in the public, and then he becomes a threat to the president of the United States. He's trying to kill him. That's the same thing. There's got to be plenty of soldiers of fortune or people who now become, work for governments that are enemies of ours. That are
that's why almost every military veteran is kind of considered to be a homegrown terrorist.
Right.
Yeah.
And that just tells you where the government's head is these days. Like, what the hell are you doing if you think that every veteran who served in the military is a potential homegrown terrorist?
Right.
And Jill, we got a question from one of our viewers. It says, "How do you get in the Secret Service, and what makes you eligible for the job?"
Well, you can never have been arrested, and your family, everyone has to be born in America. It's actually, I think you can actually just go on Government USA Jobs or something like that, and actually fill out an application, and just send it in, and they'll fingerprint you, and they'll do a whole background check, and then they'll do an extended background check. And sometimes those background checks aren't that reliable either. A couple of years ago, a company was doing a background check on me. This is during COVID. They were doing a background check on me, and I get a call from the company that's doing the background check, and they go, "Can you just send us pictures of your diplomas?" And I was like, "Well, why didn't you supposed to get that from the college? You're supposed to well, it's COVID, and we can't get a hold of anybody over there, and there's nobody in there. And it'd be a lot easier if you just send." I go, "You do realize that I can Photoshop a picture of my diploma. I can Photoshop anything you want and send it to you. I don't understand." And they were like, "Well, no, you take a picture of it." I go, "Yeah." So I take a picture of it, and then I take that picture and I put that in Photoshop, and then I change it.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, okay, where the hell how did this company get hired to do background checks?
Right. Absolutely. It's amazing.
Yeah, but you know what? You think about it, and they want you to feel safe, but there definitely is a lot of glitches out there. But if they told the public a quarter of what's really going on, forget about it.
Oh yeah. No, I'm sure.
Oh, please. It's so funny when you think about everything that the government tells us that they want you to be to. Oh, rest assured, we have it under control. And if you're a smart person, if you're a thinking person, and if you get involved in something like you said with a background check, anyone who applies for a pistol permit in New York State, or to buy a gun, you have to have a background check. Those background checks. I mean, I've walked into sporting goods stores and they'll say, okay, we got to do a background check. They call up the local police department, they run your license, and that's your background check, and then you walk out of the store with a gun.
Yeah, pretty much. When I lived in other states, I owned guns in those states, but I was, I said, well, maybe I should have a gun here. In New York City, we're getting high crime and everything, and I was going to say, like, they're going to say, why do you, like, well, I think it's unconstitutional now that they can't ask you why you feel you need a gun, or why. I think that was struck down in the Supreme Court. One of the New York State where you had to have a reason to have a gun in New York City, and not just for self-protection. And I was like, because I'm a former nuclear scientist that worked for the Department of Defense, I don't know. Do you think maybe someone like me shouldn't be walking around on the street unarmed and unable to defend himself?
Right. It's amazing. It's amazing, like you said, that you don't that they don't at least keep tabs on you as to who your contacts are, where you're going. Are you visiting foreign countries?
Oh yes, they do. Well, when you go, so when you do get your, so this new security clearance that I just got, I started work for the government again starting last month. So they had to do everything over. So you had to fill in all the gaps. You had to account for all your gaps. You had to explain why there's gaps, where you were living, what you were doing, and things like that, in order for them to now reinstate your clearance. So they do that.
Oh, okay.
You can't have any gaps. Like, okay, your clearance expired on this date, so now you have to account for the time from then until the time today.
And if you wanted to go, like with a friend or family, to a foreign country, what would you have to do?
You'd have to explain why you went there and how long you were there and who you contacted. And the same thing. So let's just say I'm on Instagram or something and somebody shoots me some emails. And so I don't know. At one point I used to argue with people that thought the earth was flat. And I got pulled into that because one day somebody on Instagram says, well, Chili's a scientist. Let him explain to the flat earther why the earth's not flat. Yeah. And I started getting these flat earthers trying to know more and more information about me. And and so we have to report that. Like if somebody is making inquiries about your personal, like your PII, your personal information and whatever. I forgot what PII stands for, but it's PII. Personal identity information, I think is what it stands for. And if somebody's making inquiries for that, you kind of have to report that to security that a person not known to you wants to know more information about you. And you have to give them their Instagram account, their email, however, their phone number, however they're trying to find out information. And I don't think these people who thought the earth was flat realize how serious that is taken.
And this is just like a chat group that you were in?
Yeah, it was just like on Instagram. It's just like an Instagram chat or whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you have one infraction, they're gonna bump you. You know, there's no what's buts about it. And they know more about you than you know about yourself anyway.
Oh yeah, no, that's true.
So when you say security, who exactly are you talking about?
The company the agency I'm working for, so they have their cybersecurity, and then they have the on-site security team, and so you have your safeguard rooms, and you have to have clearance to walk into the safeguards rooms to look at things and stuff like that. So there's a security group at the nuclear facility on site.
Okay.
And that's who security.
But they're not government aligned. They're more or less hired by the private company.
Well, this is a government facility. It's a government nuclear facility. So
Oh, okay.
I'm sure that they may they may be an outside, like, what was that, Black Ops or whatever that stuff they were using
Right.
for security over in Iraq or Afghanistan. That was a private company contracted to the government to do security. So they may
Right.
be that. They may be a security force like that, or they may actually be direct employees for the government. I don't know.
Because like I did some work many years ago in HVAC at West Point,
Oh,
and
okay.
when you had to go in there,
Yeah.
they you would think that it's an Army facility. Why isn't the Army doing security? No,
Yeah.
they hire a private
Outside.
security. Yeah,
Right, just private security force.
and they're all dressed in black. They're
Yeah.
all they're holding AR-15s and armament and
At the nuclear power facilities, those are private security forces at a nuclear
Right.
power station.
yeah.
Interesting thing, when freaking Cuomo banned some weapons a few years back, he wasn't paying attention, and he literally banned the security force at the nuclear facilities from carrying weapons with more than 5 bullets in them or 9 bullets in them. And the local sheriffs had to come out and tell the security force, listen, we're not enforcing this stupid law. You guys got 17 rounds clipped
Right.
in your guns and stuff, and you're carrying them to and from work. I'm not going to enforce
Right.
this ridiculous law. And then they had to roll it back quietly,
Right.
so as not to be applicable to the security forces.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at before. This whole New York State push to they did tit for tat, because when the Supreme Court came down with that decision that New York City and New York State couldn't ask you if you had a reasonable cause to carry a weapon, then they went tit for tat and blew it completely out of proportion with totally unconstitutional laws, just to have that soapbox so they could tell the public, look, we're taking care of it. You're going to be safe. All these new laws now will usurp what the Supreme Court just did. And in reality, it's not, but people believe it.
Right.
It's a shame.
I see somebody has a question there.
Yeah, we have another question. Can you see that, Chili?
Yeah, I can see it. So yeah, I would think there would be a situation where, so you have what they call the NEST teams, the NEST, and they're made up of FBI guys and some CIA guys and some scientists and whatever. And I think there was a good movie with George Clooney where he played a NEST team member, Nuclear Emergency Security Team or something like that is what it stands for. So there would be instances if there was a homemade dirty bomb where they would send out a NEST team to go out and try to take it apart or defuse it or in some way secure it. It's not very easy.
You talk a lot about movies. The movie Broken Arrow, where with Keanu Reeves, and they lost the nuclear weapon.
Yeah,
and there were many other situations too. It wasn't what was the submarine that sunk off the coast of in the Atlantic coast, right near us, many years ago? Was it? I forget the name of it, but that had nuclear weapons on it.
Was it the Thresher?
Thresher, that's it.
Right, that went over to the what do you call it, down by Chelsea Pier.
Right, it was near us.
I remember that.
Yeah.
So right now, as we speak, somewhere in South Carolina in a swamp, there are 2 nuclear weapons that fell out of a B-52 bomber that were being carried, and they just fell out, and they landed in some swamp in South Carolina, and to this day, they have not been able to find them.
Really? Wow, you think they have some kind of sonar on them or something?
Yeah.
You would think. So the interesting thing about a nuclear device, right? So you just can't have a nuclear bomb and you just drop it and it blows up. It doesn't work that way. So there's a whole process that goes through. So the nuclear bomb has to be dropped from a specific altitude it has to fall at a specific rate because usually they attach a parachute to it. And there's a whole series of barometric things, measurements that are being taken place. And there's a whole bunch of boxes that have to be checked. It's okay, it's okay, it's okay. The GPS has to match to where it was set to go. And if all of those things match, then it'll detonate. And it usually detonates about a mile above its target. And that is for the blast effect to really spread out and do the most, possible damage that it can do.
Okay, here's a good question. Go ahead. So the first two nuclear weapons dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima, fat boy, little man, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Why were they so huge compared to newer ones that we have today?
Well, those were atomic bombs.
Right.
And today we have nuclear bombs.
Okay.
It just had to do with all the wiring and stuff. I don't know. You can Google on YouTube the Trinity experiments when they detonated Trinity, and you'll see this thing was huge. It wasn't huge because of the amount of uranium or plutonium they were using. It was huge because of all the wiring that they took from Radio Shack or whatever and was trying to wire this whole thing around.
Because nothing's like solid state like it is today.
Yeah. It's not digital, but it is solid state. Weapons from the 70s and on. Raytheon Nuclear has a contract to upgrade a lot of our nuclear arsenal with more digital electronics. I think they got awarded a couple $100 million project.
And how do they make it? How do they make those electronic things fail safe so they know they'll work?
Well, they have what they call and I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not going to say for sure. What they call a DAS system, DAS, and that's diverse actuation system, meaning if you have to get a 2 out of 3 logic or a 3 out of 4 logic, so all these different signals coming in, you can't just get one signal and poof, it goes off. It's got to take a diverse amount of input coming in, and it's doing okay, I got a go. I got another go. I got another go. Okay, I got 3 out of 4. It's a go. And so that's kind of how they safeguard. That could be a way of how they would safeguard a weapon.
Right. That's interesting.
Jen, you got anything to add, Jen?
I want to know, how did you come or get to the name of your book? What's the story behind that?
From Hell's Heart. So in the book, From Hell's Heart, as you know, or you may not know, is a line from the movie Moby Dick. And Melville is the author. And in the book, Ahab, as he you guys, we should have had it there the whole time and just keep showing it. So, in the movie, Captain Ahab, and I don't know if I even wrote it in it. It's probably not even in the book. The line that Ahab says, "With my last breath, I stab at thee," or he says, "With my last breath," and then he says, "From hell's heart, I stab at thee." And in the movie, when Mickey Blaine kills the Colombian drug lord guy, he does it in a not a very good way. The drug lord says, with my last breath, I stab at thee. And that line is also actually used by Ricardo Montalban in the Star Trek movie.
Right.
When he's detonating. When he's detonating the what they call that, the Genesis device.
Mm.
And he tells Captain Kirk, with my last breath, I stab at thee.
Wow.
And from hell's heart, I spit my last breath at thee.
Right.
So
Interesting.
that's where it came from. Yeah.
I tell you, Chili, you have some interesting stories that, man, we could be here all night talking about them. You've opened up my eyes to a lot of things, and I hope the audience too.
I want to get someday, maybe I come on, I talk more about my photography work or whatever. I'm kind of getting ready to start doing photo shoots again and getting back into the swing of it as time permits, and get a hold of Carl, magazine friend, and see we can do some things. But I really do appreciate having me on and letting me kind of talk about myself. It's one of my favorite things to do.
That's great.
I think it's one of everybody's favorite things to do.
Oh yeah.
I was thinking of a sequel. I've been kicking around the sequel to that book, kind of 10, 20 years later, where, what's Chili, now it's no longer Mickey Blaine, now it's Chili Palmer, and what is Chili doing these days, and where he is, and what he's hiding up to.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, do it. I got a question for you before we go.
Sure.
You had an interim between working for the government and then a pause. And now you're back into it again.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, during that interim, do they keep tabs on you? Or do they bother you?
No.
Or do you have to call in and so on? Nothing? You're
Nothing.
left on your own? That's it?
Now, during that time, I was working at a nuclear power facility, which also had, now it wasn't a Q clearance or an L clearance, but it was what the NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, calls an unescorted access clearance. So that helped to fill the gap where they said, well, okay, he wasn't like he was hanging out in South America with his Colombian in-laws, his cartel in-laws or whatever, or he wasn't over in Afghanistan, working with the Mujahideen or something. So I was kind of able to, wasn't that difficult to account for all of that.
Okay, great. Nikki, how we doing?
We're over an hour.
Okay, I guess it's time to end, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Going all night.
Chili.
Yeah, no.
I'm very interested, but it was definitely a good show. Thank you.
Oh
for
yeah,
coming.
really
Chili,
interesting.
thanks a lot.
And
Come
go.
on again. Come on again, will you?
Hey, Chili.
Sure. Just invite me.
Chili, don't turn out to be the mad scientist.
You know what they say?
I'm in Arizona. Make sure you stay away from Arizona. I'm enjoying my retirement now.
You know what they say? They say you live long enough to become the villain. The hero lives long enough to become the villain.
Well, we could all say we knew you when.
Yeah.
Don't forget, people, get his book. Get his book.
So if I can shout, so on Instagram, it's Madman with a blue box, but it says Madman W blue box, and that's my Instagram. And on YouTube, it's Chili Palmer 10 on YouTube. And what else? I'm on Twitter. Huh?
I said you have Twitter?
Yeah, and I'm on Twitter, Madman W Blue Box. And that is the Doctor Who that you can see the crack in the multiverse from one of the Doctor Who episodes. So I'm a big fan of Doctor Who as well. Doctor Who's pretty amazing. Maybe I'll talk about that some other time. He's a much older man running around with young model-like girls on adventures across the universe. Like, how perfect can that be?
Right?
You said it was. What was your Twitter?
Madman, all one word. Madman W Blue Box.
And that's the same for Instagram.
And that's the same for Instagram. Madman W Blue Box. And again, that's after one of the Doctor Who. That's the 11th Doctor, I believe. That was kind of his moniker. A man with a blue box. 12th Doctor was kind of Dr. Mysterio or Dr. Disco or something like that, and so.
Great.
Great. Really great. Great show.
Great, Chili.
All right,
Thanks.
guys. Just tell me where we can. I mean, I guess this will be on the YouTube channel, or where can this be seen?
It's good. It's on Twitter at just drew
Well,
back.
I think you sent me the. I
I
think you
did
sent me the link. Yeah.
It's at Book Last Goodbye. We have
Okay.
a Facebook group that you can join. It'll be on there, and then it's all live right now, where everybody's
Right. I know it's live
Or you
now.
go to YouTube, and it's the Last Goodbye Book Heroes
Okay.
of America.
Yeah,
And I
those
said
are-
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so anybody can go on YouTube and look it up. Okay.
or Twitter.
And
Yep.
just see it.
Yep.
Don't forget my book.
Exactly.
Little me.
Publish
Both
it,
books
show it.
are available on Amazon. Both great reads, From Hell's Heart, and of course my dad's book, The Last Goodbye.
Sure. Sure.
Get out and get them. They're awesome books, both of them.
Okay.
So enjoy it.
Appreciate you.
Thank
Appreciate you
wanna
much,
wish
Chili.
everyone-
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for having
Thanksgiving.
me on. It was a great conversation. Have a
Great.
good Thanksgiving, everybody.
Everybody having
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to all.
I had a blast with you, Chili. I
Thank
just
you.
hope that you don't get angry.
I'll be a mad scientist then. That's all.
All right.
You know.
Come on into Mad Scientist. We'll have more laughs.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey, we'll get together someday. You're in Brooklyn. I'm over here, so we're both in New York. We got to get together.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All right,
Come up
take
to the
care,
mountain. Come up to the mountain. Only an hour away. That's it. No, it'd be
Okay.
nice.
All right.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.
All right.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night, guys.
Good
Okay.
night.
Bye bye.